Okay, so let's continue with this concept of the United States of America being Babylon. And we're in the book of Jeremiah, and we're in chapter 50 and verse 29. Verse 29 of chapter 50 of the prophetic book of Jeremiah. And he says in verse 29, for she has been proud against Yahweh. Okay, so we looked at that already. We know that pride is one of the things. In verse 30 it says, and all her men of war shall be cut off in that day. So we know that she's a country that has men of war, an army, a military. You're going to see that a lot of countries can fit some of these things. You could say that French people are proud, or that Japanese people are proud, or whomever. But let's see that all of these descriptions fit one country or not. Okay. So in verse 31 it says, behold, I am against you, O most haughty one, says Yahweh of hosts. O haughty one. We know the word haughty means somebody who has their nose up in the air and thinks that they're very better than others. Again, you might not see that if you're living in the U.S., but believe me, when you talk to people out of the U.S., they all see it. They all notice that Americans, without realizing it, and maybe they don't intend to be. I don't think we intend, we plan, or we want to be proud or haughty or arrogant, but it's part of the character of most Americans and of the character of the country. Think about how the leaders of the country act too. But it is a quality. You see it. You see it all the time. And I lived there my whole life, so I know what it's like when I left the U.S. I could see the difference with people in the rest of the world. They don't all act like that. They don't have that same haughty quality. And it's something that we can fight against and try to change and not have that, because we should be humble. We should have a more humble attitude. It's one of the fruits of the Spirit. I think it's one of the fruits of the Spirit, but it's something that we should definitely have anyway. Okay, in verse 32, it says, the most proud shall stumble and fall, and no one will raise him up. I will kindle a fire in his cities, and it will devour all around him. So this has a few points that are really interesting. Again, the most proud. It's the most proud nation, and not in a positive way, like some people say, hey, I'm so proud. I'm proud to know you. I'm proud to be part of this. No, this is a negative quality in this person. Yahweh does not like pride. He likes a humble heart. So this is a proud nation which will stumble and fall, and we're starting to see that the nation is starting to stumble and fall. It has been for the past few years, but definitely now. Talking in October of 2008 right now, the end of October. No one will be able to raise this nation up. And now here's an interesting thing. In many of the chapters and verses that we are going to see that talk about Babylon, or Chaldea is another name for Babylon, it talks about that it's going to be destroyed with fire, and that there's going to be smoke and fire, smoke rising up in this country when it gets destroyed. So this is a key thing. It's not something to look for, because by then it's too late, but it's a key thing, a pattern, a repetitive pattern that you're going to see in the scriptures that talk about Babylon. I will kindle a fire in his cities, and it will devour all around him. In verse 37, it says, a sword is against their horses, against their chariots, and against the mixed peoples who are in her midst. Now, what nation is the most famous for having mixed peoples? What does that mean to you? I'll give it my interpretation, but what does it sound like? A nation with mixed peoples. They're not just pure one type of people, it's mixed. Of course, it's the U.S. Now, I know England is a melting pot, and many countries in Europe also have a lot of Africans and people from other countries come into their land. But let's be honest, the U.S. is the #1 country known for having mixed people in it. I'm from New Jersey originally, and all my life I've heard other languages spoken: Spanish, German, French, Chinese, Japanese, Korean, Arabic, Hebrew, Yiddish, all types of languages, all types of peoples. We're number one. We are the melting pot. The U.S. has the number one amount of mixed people in it. That's a key verse. Jeremiah 50 and verse 37. A sword is against their horses, against their chariots. You know, these are symbols of war, your horses and your chariots. Now, if you want to interpret that as being like tanks or something like that, you know, what's used in war for movement, definitely the U.S. has the best tanks in the world. Ours are the most sophisticated, with laser guided and computerized. And he is against a sword. A weapon of war is against the mixed people who are in the middle, in the midst, within the country. A sword is against her treasures, and they will be robbed. So this is a country with treasures. It's not going to be a poor third world country. So we can eliminate all of the third world countries. It's a country with a strong army, and it's a country with many mixed people in it, and it's a country with a lot of money or treasures. Okay. Now, in verse 40, it says, "As Yahweh overthrew Sodom and Gomorrah and their neighbors, says Yahweh, so no one shall reside there, nor a son of man dwell in it." Okay, so let's look at that. That's important. We know what happened to Sodom and Gomorrah. Sodom and Gomorrah was these cities, and not only Sodom and Gomorrah, it was other cities around it too. It was just filled with so much sin, it was incredible. And Yahweh said, I have to destroy it. And Abraham even pleaded with him, please, you know, what if there's a few good people there? He said, okay, if there's a few good people, I won't do it. But there weren't. There was no one there except for Lot and his wife and his daughters, and his wife looked back, like she wanted to go back. They had to be dragged out of there practically. So Sodom and Gomorrah they were utterly destroyed, all of those cities. They're present day. You can go to Israel along the coast of the Dead Sea, and you can see the ruins of these cities. They're ashes till today. There's nothing built there. It's just ashes. You can still see the outlines of what looks like ancient cities. Anyway, they were completely destroyed. So he's saying that just as Sodom and Gomorrah, this is what's going to happen to Babylon. And so no one shall reside or live there, and no son of man shall dwell in it. Well, this is I'm mentioning this verse just so we can check off the list of possible nations, that it can't be. Many people say, well, what about, isn't this talking about ancient Babylon? You know, where Iraq is, between the Euphrates River and the Tigris River? No, because people do live in Iraq, and people actually live in the ancient ruins, where the ancient ruins of ancient Babylon are. It's still there. You can go there as a tourist, and there are still people living right there. Yahweh can't lie, and he says right here as a promise, no one shall reside there, no son of man shall dwell in it. No one shall live there anymore. And that's what's going to happen. When the United States is completely attacked and destroyed, no one will ever live in the U.S. ever again. It's going to be completely destroyed. I know it sounds harsh, but as we go on with the study, you'll see the reasons why. So definitely, Babylon is a land. Babylon is a country. It has mixed people. It has an army. It has riches. And it has people who are very proud, people who are fat like heifers, and is also called the hammer of the whole earth. And it possibly sounds like Maratha, like America. That's why one of the reasons I think phonetically it's talking about America. That one is in dispute. Well, that's that. So that's chapter 50 of Jeremiah. Next, we're going to look at chapter 51, which these are the key chapters of the Bible that talk about Babylon and Chaldea. Chapter 50 and 51 of Jeremiah, and then there are many others, a few others, and we're going to go over those. So in the next time we'll talk about Jeremiah 51.